This is part 4 of the upper extremity, page 352. Is that what it says? Yes. And it's a complicated video, and I'm going to go slowly through this so that you get the idea of what's going on. We're about to study the arm. And remember that the arm is, what is the arm? The arm is between the shoulder and the elbow. Between the elbow and the wrist is the forearm. All right, we'll get to that. But first of all, I need for you to understand what is the brachial plexus. Here's the brachial plexus as it emerges. Now, this is sort of an analog version here. This is what we see with our eyes if we do enough dissection in the region of where? In the region of the subcutaneous area beneath the subclavian. So removing the clavicle, we get to see the first rib. If you touch your own clavicle and then try to reach under it to touch the first rib, you really can't do it. You can try. You can touch just a little bit of the medial aspect of the first rib, but very quickly you end up in the inner space between the first rib and the second rib. So the clavicle is kind of like cutting across there and protecting this spot, which are the trunks of the C5 to T1, C5, 6, 7, 8, and then T1, okay, which come together to form 3 trunks, upper, middle, and lower trunks. And that's what we see here. And then things divide up further beyond that. So it's a plexus, and it's a little bit like the maze at the approach to the Bay Bridge on the East Bay. It's the maze. So and as we turn here in a landscape direction, this is the brachial plexus right here, emerging from cranial nerves C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1. They often add C4 because there are some anomalous inclusions in some individuals. But mostly it is technically a little bit after the spinal nerve. So I need you to think to yourself that we have a vertebral column over here. We have a spinal cord. We have the spinal nerve emerging through the intervertebral foramen. And then immediately we're going to have division between the anterior and posterior divisions, okay, branches of the spinal nerve. These are all anterior branches of spinal nerve C5, 6, 7, 8, T1. I know that there are only 7 cervical vertebrae, but there are 8 cervical nerves, okay, because these are all above the vertebra. This is below C7 vertebra, C8, and that allows T1 to actually travel in the rib, first rib. Okay, that's why we have it that way. And do you see how we're coming down with a long thoracic? It's going, you have to imagine here that we have ribs, and it's just hugging the ribs right here, and it innervates the serratus anterior. And then we have some more branches. Now we have trunks, and I need you to focus now. Okay, are you with me? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anterior divisions of spinal nerves, and we're going to come together to form the upper, the middle, and the lower trunk. Right here is that first rib, and then coming across this way and behind is the anterior and middle scalene. So this is what we see emerging, okay, when we have that dissection that I showed you over here, okay. So now here's the trunks. The trunks are going to go through further divisions. We're going to have anterior and posterior divisions for each of these trunks. So each one, upper, middle, and lower, they're going to have an anterior and posterior division. All of the posteriors come together. Do you see that? All the posteriors. And we're going to have a posterior cord. So this is the realm of cords. This is the realm of divisions. Okay, so we're going to have Here's the middle and the upper. The anterior divisions come together to form the lateral cord. All of the posteriors come to posterior cord. The medial cord right here is going to come exclusively from the lower trunk. Do you see how it, only one thing coming right here, anterior division, that's the medial cord. These guys are all lateral, posterior, and medial to what is called the axillary artery. That is what is the axilla? The axilla is your armpit. So snuggled up deep in your armpit is an axillary artery, which is going to become a brachial artery pretty soon. But for right at this moment, while we're in the axilla, we have the cords. See? Right? Can you imagine that if you were having some problem where you had to use crutches and you shoved that crutch up into your armpit, that you might actually cause injury? Right? So really good crutches are not ones that go up into your armpit. The really good crutches are the ones that wrap around your forearm and provide a little branch sticking out for your hand to rest on. Hand and forearm. Those are the good crutches. Okay, moving right along. Then we have this next thing coming down. Now notice we have kind of an M shape here. Do you see the M shape? Whoa. Okay, these are coming from the lateral cord and from the medial cord. This part of the M is musculocutaneous. This part of the M is ulnar and musculocutaneous. And then there's a middle part of the M in which both sides contribute, and that's the median. Okay, then if we come off the posterior, we get one thing, and that's the radial. Okay, so now you know everything about the brachial plexus in terms of the nerves. Now what you need to know beyond that is that the musculocutaneous does the anterior arm, the front of your arm. Who does the back of your arm? That's going to be the radial nerve, this one coming off the posterior cord, going to do the posterior arm and the posterior forearm. Okay? And then who's this guy? This is the median nerve, is going to do the anterior forearm and the lateral thummy side of your hand. Remember, thumbs are lateral in anatomical position. So going to your forefinger and your thumb. Okay, median nerve is going to go through the tunnel, the carpal tunnel, and it's going to be innervating most of the muscles of your anterior forearm. What about the posterior? Oh yeah, that's the radial nerve. Posterior arm, posterior forearm. Where's the anterior? Anterior arm is the musculocutaneous. Anterior forearm is the median nerve. Except for 1.5 muscles, the ulnar nerve does the anterior forearm 1.5 muscles, as well as the medial half of the hand. Remember, the medial half is where your fifth little finger is. That's the medial half. Okay, now you really know everything. Okay, now I have a handout for you that is this one, and it recapitulates all of that. Okay, and here, what is this? These are the primary anterior rami. The word ramus, or rami in plural, means branches of C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1. Then we have trunks. Here's upper, middle, and lower. Then we have anterior and posterior divisions. All the posteriors go to the posterior cord. These two anteriors go to lateral. This anterior goes to medial. The posterior cord is simple because it branches. As it branches, it forms the axillary, which does deltoid. It forms the radial, which does posterior arm and posterior forearm, and then it ends. Okay, and then the lateral coming off of the upper and middle here, lateral, is going to become the musculocutaneous. That does the anterior arm. And then the medial, okay, medial to the axillary artery, medial is going to come down and do the ulnar nerve. The ulnar nerve does the 1.5 muscles of the anterior forearm, and the medial half of the hand. And then together, this M-shaped thing with muscutaneous here, ulnar here, together they put a couple things together to make the median nerve. The median nerve actually goes through the carpal tunnel and innervates the anterior forearm and the lateral thummy side of the hand. Okay? And then we have the carpal tunnel through which the median nerve goes. Do you see the carpal tunnel? I made it like a little railroad. And then I list the 10 things here, the tendons of the muscles we're about to learn. So I'll come back here and review this.